Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 2 of Wedding Season. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So this episode just continues the whole thing of, yeah, Katie's not a normal person. There's definitely something here. Not only the fact is, I don't think the immediate reactions, I don't think a typical person's reaction would be like, oh my god, they're looking for this particular car we're driving in, so let's push it over the ledge so that it'll get destroyed and we have to walk on foot. I mean, I think the closest I can think of is maybe End of the Effing World, where they ended up blowing up the car, but that didn't necessarily work the way they were kind of expecting it to. No, that wasn't even, no, the car broke down and then it exploded, didn't it? I don't remember now, it's been a while. Either way, it just seemed like the way she was acting then and the entire episode, she's acting like she's so in control, which I think I kind of feel bad for Stefan because it's like she kind of dismisses him so easily. It's like, oh, are you an idiot? Why'd you use your credit card? Yes, I've watched plenty enough stuff to be like, yeah, when you're on your run, you do not use your credit card because that's how you can how people track you. You always use cash. That's how you do it. Or you steal. Stealing is easier because otherwise you'd have to go into your bank account, pull out cash, and then we're like, oh, you were in this particular. I don't know if they could necessarily. They probably could track what specific machine you got your money from or what bank you went. Like that would have been a whole thing. So it's like probably like when you're on a run, you probably want to like snatch whatever you can. She calls him an idiot for using his card. It's like, yeah, he's new to this and she has a lot more experience. We don't know why she does, but then we kind of get our flashbacks at like her engagement party. And then her father-in-law confronts her about the fact is, he's like, yeah, your history doesn't go back like after 3 years. Like there's nothing about you. And I've looked into the school you claimed you went to, like a Swiss school or whatever. And you're like, wait, so your entire background is fabricated? And jumping around a little bit, the moment she was talking to her father-in-law and she was like, she told that story, like, yeah, my father's a fisherman. And then like, Papa Delaney was like, oh yeah, my father was a fisherman too. I was like, that's why she told that story. That story was so full of shit. She said that because she knew it would tug on your heartstrings. She's done her due diligence when it comes to this family. She knew that was probably like, in case, probably breaking case, here's a lie in the break just in case you are, it's meant to be her ace in the hole, like a last ditch effort if everything else fails. It's just supposed to bring out the crocodile tears and, oh, I love your son so much. I pretended to be someone I'm not just because I knew if I came from nothing, you would never accept me into this family. So she knew exactly what it said. So like, I don't believe everything, like, because Stefan started believing that entire speech at the end there, but I was like, I don't. I believe it's all horseshit. But she kept up the front later on, like when asked, like, oh, do you love Stefan? Because he's like, Stefan asked, like, do you love Hugo? Because it's like, why did you sleep with me if you did, if you really meant all that? And she's like, well, people get married for different reasons. Kind of implying it's not like, I don't think Stefan really read into it, but I think it is kind of implying like, I mean, there could be people who are purely marrying, like, right, you're marrying for money. Granted, her father-in-law at that time, maybe something changed in those 3 months, but was really adamant about her having an ironclad prenup. Because it's like, right, I don't want you kind of taking anything from our family's wealth, which they kind of dive into the Delaney's more like present day and 3 months ago, where Stefan ended up talking to Suji about it. And it's like, yeah. It's like when Hugo and Yuna were together, they didn't really talk. She didn't really bring it up, but like that family's got enough money that it's like you usually make get secrets buried with that type of money. And also like Yuna apparently hated the rest of that family, so we don't know what. So that's what I was like, because I felt like this family felt mobbed up, and they kind of seemed like they might, at the very least, the way it's kind of implied, like there might be mobs or other criminal entities that want this family dead. I guess everyone else at the wedding were just guests, like everyone that was like family, because there was his sister, Hugo himself, probably like his mom and his dad, and probably like, once again, probably immediate family, but maybe it's not even just immediate family, like anyone Delaney-wise, it was up there, because once again, it was 8 people that died, so. Not unless it was like a grandpa and grandma type of situation, so. I do love that this episode kind of like deals with the whole angle of fate too, because in the past, three months ago, he starts warning like, right, like the fact is we slept together. He wanted her number because he wanted to figure out like, well, did this mean something or did it not? It's like, yeah, the fact is she's marrying Hugo. That should be enough to leave it at that. But also he happens to bump into her and it's like, wait, are you going to Lorna's wedding? And she's like, no, I've got a thing around the corner. He's like, hey, like that's weird, right? Like, oh, the fact is I happen to run into her. We were just talking about her. Like, hey, we happen to be in the general same area. Maybe I should, check that out. But it's like, no, you actually have a wedding you're actually invited to, which is your friend Lorna, which I love the whole thing of like, right, Lorna's supposed to be the most unlucky person in love. And I want to say it was Jackson who poked fun at Suji being like, yeah, you're the, what about you? And it's like, oh, because you're supposed to be like the unluckiest person. But things with Lorna don't work out. Apparently her last boyfriend, got lost at sea or something. You're like, okay. So they're making it sound like she's cursed. And her current husband is her former driving instructor. You're like, oh, that seems weird. I immediately was like, oh, is this like a driving instructor like you were younger and now he's older? It's like, no, like this is probably like super recent and now the wedding's happening and it's a dry wedding, which Stefan's friends are like, oh my god, no. The moment this ceremony is over, we need to bounce. We need to get the hell out of here. There's like no alcohol here either. It's like, oh, this is god awful. And as Lorna's walking down the aisle, her husband, her soon-to-be hubby, bounces. And she's like, right, he's going to be here so everyone stays. It's like, oh my god. Wait, she's getting in the car and she sat in the car. It's like, and then later on, when she gives that speech later on about like the car and everything, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's the car that they fucked in. It's like, that is kind of, I mean, it's sentimental because it's like, right, because of the car being significant, and sentimental because it's like, hey, he was our driver instructor at one point in time. And it's like, hey, the first time they made love was in the back of that car. It's like, it's weird. And also to have that present at your wedding, to have everyone to see like, hey, this is the vehicle me and my hubby, well, before we got together, like when we first hooked up, was in the back of this. It feels weird. Probably no wonder she got in the car to probably like have a breakdown when he literally took off, which was heartbreaking. He was just like, oh, I can't do this. I'm like, I guess he just got cold feet or whatever. I'm wondering what like sparked that in him. And I love Stefan says, oh my god, fate must be working in my direction because the fact is it ruined this wedding so that I could get up and rush to another one, which his friends are like, fine, do it. Just make sure you bring some booze back for us. So, and then Suji's trying to get with that guy, his name is Arthur, but he's saying that the song Fernando is named. It's like, oh, he's like, yeah, that was because of me. It's like, Fernando, yep. But your name is Arthur. He's like, yep. And she's looking like, wait, what? She even looks it up later on. She's like, it has nothing to do with that. Like, she's actually looked into the meaning of the song. It's like, oh, I guess he's just trying to make an excuse to kind of get lucky at the wedding. But Stefan going to Katie's engagement party, which is so interesting because she got pissed at him about like him just kind of crashing the party, but she took advantage of it because it's like, hey, I need you to pretend like you're my old school pal, but obviously he couldn't keep up that life forever. But I did love that they were going around enjoying things. It's like, oh yeah, like that's our kid. That's our kindergarten. It's named after our kindergarten teacher. Yeah, who turned out to be a cop. I was like, what's that? And he was like, oh, kindergarten cop. I was like, oh, right, okay, I got the reference. I got it. I was like, it took a second for that to kind of click in my head, but I was like, okay, I got it. I was like, have I ever seen that movie all the way through? Am I confused? I don't know if I'm confusing that with another movie. That's the one. That's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, isn't it? Kindergarten Cop. I think it is. I don't remember now. I feel like if it's it might be the movie I'm thinking of. I'm not sure. But they were kind of having a little fun with this whole like thing that they were doing, and obviously because Hugo and Yuna dated, he's met Stefan before, but Stefan wasn't too worried because it's like, yeah, he never remembers my name. It's like, hey, see you later, Steve. And it's like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm like, okay. I was like, kind of a dick move, but I guess it's just kind of like, yo, kind of feels like, oh, you're so narcissistic about your own thing that you're just like completely oblivious. Like the fact is, you've met probably Stefan on a handful of occasions, but you don't even recognize him. It's like, yeah. I mean, I get maybe that's just supposed to be more so like, oh, Stefan has that kind of forgettable face or something like that. But after everything went down at the wedding, and after hearing what Katie had to say about Hugo, it made, Stefan had to go back to Lorna's wedding. And for him, it's like, what's frustrating is like, right, there's just something off about that whole thing. Cause he's like, despite what Katie has said, he kind of took it to heart, but he also felt like, no, like me and her, we have a connection, and it's just a reminder that she's marrying someone else. But he's like, yeah, there's just something there. Once again, back to what Katie said, like there's multiple reasons for getting married. And not a lot of times, I don't want to say that. Sometimes it isn't about love. You're getting married for other extenuating circumstances. I'm not going down the CIA route, but she has some kind of checkered past. I say checkered, but she has some mysterious past. Whether it is like, oh my gosh, she was a CIA agent or something, like to have the know-how that she does and makes it seem like, oh, I'm so in control. I know what I'm doing. Like this, and even using the word specifically, this is my world. I'm like, who are you? Are you connected to another like mob family or something? Could it be she got closer to the Laney family because there's history there where it's like, maybe there was some truth to what she said about, when she was referencing her own father, him dying young and broke. Maybe it has something to do with the Delaney's and how they got their money. So maybe this is a little bit of a revenge story. She was getting close to them to unravel them, but it didn't work out. Someone else got to them before she could. She probably never planned to kill them, but maybe just financially destroy them, leave them kind of broke like her family was, maybe? I don't know. I did think it was when Stefan was dancing with Lorna, it's like, oh, this was supposed to be like her and her hubby's dance. That he's like, right, maybe you kind of have to accept the fact is that it kind of wasn't meant to be. It's like, oh, because he was in jail. It's like, but no, because he left and he's not coming back. And she kind of took it in a more positive spin of maybe it was fate. Fate brought him into my life, and fate meant that we weren't meant to be. But for her, it's like the time we were together, it still meant something to me because at the end of the day, I'm glad to have gotten him in my life even for these few months. It's that thing of it's better to have loved than lost to never have loved at all. Which, the hopeless romantic that I am kind of buys into that, whole thing too. I think it's such a dick thing that Anil and Jackson make a drinking game out of it. It's like every time you see something sad, you have to drink. I'm like, that's kind of super depressing and super fucked up of them to do. But especially Anil, because seeing like, oh my god, like this wedding going down the way it did kind of made him get a little jittery about him and his wife's wedding. It's like, yeah, like what if fiance's wedding. The fact is, like, yeah, he had never really thought about it before, but seeing the groom run away this time made him go like, yeah, there's a strong possibility my future wife to be could end up doing a run, like could be doing a run or two. But she's like, no matter, that's never going to happen. I love that she was doing the little voice thing and he tried to do it. She's like, no, don't do the voice. He's like, sorry. It's just like, I love that interest. That is such an interesting dynamic those two have. Speaking of Lorna, did seem like she potentially, she might be drunk at that point, but her and Arthur, we at least see like kind of dancing and then making out on the dance floor, so might be kind of over the whole her fiance dumping her thing, but it's like, yeah, that curse thing probably make that Arthur thing not happen either. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but kind of with all that in the past, present day, our two detectives, what is it, it's something with a D. The other detective, her name is Metz. Was it Dunshow or something like that? I'm butchering it. Talking about the conversation of fate. Apparently those two hooked up. She was like upset because it's like, right, the main suspect in one of the biggest cases of my career ended up escaping. We both got drunk and then like, yeah, that's all it was. But for him, it felt like more. He was like, right, that, maybe it was fate that kind of brought us together, like, and she's like, right, let's separate work and let's keep things professional. Other stuff will say other stuff. Work stuff will say work stuff. So that's definitely going to be interesting while you're hunting down this kind of complicated couple situation while you're kind of going through your own thing. I made reference to the end of the effing world, and it's a very similar thing because the cops in that, at least in the first season, they had a very complicated situation. It's not as bad as this. That was just very tumultuous. That was just a whole thing. But I don't think this will be It feels similar, but I don't think it's going to be exactly like it. That whole dynamic. The interesting thing about them going to go see Uncle Fred was interesting. The moment she said Uncle Fred, I was like, wait, as in like, I was like, because I thought Stefan would have said it. I thought he would have been like, he's just like, oh, she's like, Uncle Fred. I'm like, wouldn't he immediately go like, Fred Delaney? Because I guess she's assuming like she must be referencing her own uncle. But the moment she said just Uncle Fred, I'm like, you specifically didn't say last name because you know like he'd probably freaking out. You going to see a Delaney because it's like, right, the rest of his family's dead, and all of a sudden we're going to show up at his place. Like, isn't that going to be wild? But it's like, no, he's always been nice to me. He never really cared too much about the family. I mean, that's how we actually united over like his disdain for the rest of the family, as he refers to them as I guess we can call it almost a gamer word, using the C word. I mean, it's only a gamer word here in the US. I guess you could say big word. I like that being like a slur or bad word is kind of like a gamer word. I do like that motif for like words. It's like, oh, the N word. It's like, oh yeah, someone's using in the YMH world, it's like a big word if you say it, but like any other place, you're like, oh, it's a gamer word or something like that. I don't know. I just think that's interesting, but it's like, yeah, using the C word, super casual. I love him being like, oh, they were a bunch of C words. God rest their souls. It's like, that's, talking shit about your family and kind of like saying how much you still love them regardless in the same breath. Because, hey, that's what family is. You hate them and you love them at the same time. Beautiful contradiction. Once again, just going back to it, I feel like Katie is so mean to Stefan because it's like you did kind of like go out of your way to drag him into all this and you wanted him to believe you and everything. But it's like now that you're on this road trip, you were kind of okay at first. And after last episode, you seemed okay. But I guess it's like you needed to kind of keep up that to drag him along because for her, it's like, I got to clear my name because everyone thinks I did it, but I didn't do this. And when she was having a panic attack, he was able to calm her down. And I'm like, wow. And despite all that, you kind of been a dick to him every since of the way because it's like, oh, he's an amateur and all that. So it's like, yeah, he's never been on the run. He has no experience. She comes off a little dickish in this episode for me. Just the way she kind of talks to him. And it's like, he's kind of got these concerns. I'm like, oh, we should probably leave. And she's like, no, just calm down for a second. So Fred does talk about how, well, he lost Isabel, which was his wife. And he also lost their daughter, I guess, 10 years ago to like drugs. And he says that Katie kind of reminded him of Isabel. And it's like, right, it was kind of just nice to have someone else in the family. And even saying like, yeah, there's a long list of people that would want the family dead. You don't get to that position. You don't have that amount of money without causing issues, without gaining enemies. But then Stefan tells Katie like, right, something's off here. I'm a gullible idiot and I care about you. Yet even I have a hard time really fully, even I had to ask whether or not you killed the Delaney's. And it's like, this guy who was literally related to them had no problems believing, like immediately believes you had nothing to do with it. Like, why is he so quick to not believe that you had nothing to do with it? Unless, yeah, he might not have been directly involved, but he's involved nonetheless. Which she was so dismissive, being like, really? Like, you're useless. And he's like, oh, I'm useless? And he's like, is that what you really think? You want the truth? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, yes, I think you're useless. That's what I mean. Like, she's super, like, mean in this episode. Which I think is kind of interesting because, like, there's sort of like, because I don't know if I've ever seen Rosa Salazar play a character quite like this. Once again, I'm not familiar with her entire filmography, but obviously it's just like, it's just once again, it's just kind of neat seeing like her and just so much stuff back to back. Obviously, she was already in Undone, but obviously season 2 came out this year. Then obviously, I want to say, wasn't that last year or was that still this year? I think that was probably last year. Might have been earlier this year, or when brand new Cherry Flavor came out on Netflix. So they're complicated characters that have their own issues, but they're not as mean as Katie is. Like I said, she could very like cut you down kind of easily. And I guess they must have seen the people rolling up or something. But it's like Katie was so dismissive, but then the moment like it turns out, oh, he is involved in all this. He called people in to kind of take care of Katie and Stefan, but the moment they go to the bathroom, they're already gone. So either they heard them rolling up or saw them rolling up, and that made them decide to sneak out the back. Either way, that looked like a professional hit squad type of team. So, and it definitely feels like we are dealing with kind of like some mob related stuff. So whether that ends up really being the case or not, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But I am so curious to see where all this takes us. I'm guess basing on this, the season is going to be that structure of part of the episode is going to be set in the past, you know, that 3-month period before the wedding, and then everything's going to be post-wedding / Delaney massacre, you know, present day. So that's going to be an interesting back and forth, because I guess that's also going to be our way to learn more about the other characters, like Stefan's friend group and stuff like that. Because I didn't talk about it, but last episode, his friend group is so important to him because he says, like, right, he grew up in the foster care system and he never really had, like, I think a consistent family. So, yeah, when he met, like, his people from uni and stuff, it's like, okay, I hate, you know, they're kind of a lot to handle, but he loves them and he couldn't imagine life without them. So we'll probably be kind of checking. They're probably going to be like a background, like connected focus of some of the flashback stuff. And once again, probably like some of the run-ins between Stefan and Katie, which obviously they had to end up sleeping together more than just at one time. I mean, I'm sure there's a possibility Stefan was like thinking about her and nothing else ever happened to them, but they probably still had moments anytime they ran into each other. But for him to roll up on the wedding like that means like something had to happen, but maybe it's just like, right, we had so many moments, we might have only slept together that one time, but there's just so many moments afterwards, it's like, no, I have to do this, I have to take this chance. So, you know, I said that thing last episode of like, oh yeah, it all kind of happens at the beginning, so of course it wouldn't work out, you know, because they were trying to set up the whole like, oh, this is how some rom-coms can end, and that's supposed to be the happily ever after. It's like, oh, you're not supposed to be with this person, you're supposed to be with me. To be fair, with the way the episodes are structured, yeah, that's at the beginning of the episode, and that's kind of present day, but the way with the flashbacks and everything, we'll eventually get to that point, so it'll probably be by the end of the season, we will get to the very beginning of the season when he's trying to stop the wedding. So that might be, you know, so it's actually kind of interesting structurally. If it ends up continuing down that path, we'll ultimately have to wait and see, but I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing to think about. But either way, that's really all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.